So welcome everybody, and thanks for spending a few minutes with us here at HeatSmart. And over to you, Jonathan.
Thanks, Lisa. So Lisa's introduced herself. She and I are co-directors of the HeatSmart Tompkins program. And there's some contact info here if you want it. This is a slide about who am I, and all I really want you to get out of this slide is that sometimes I'm a very serious person and sometimes I'm not. We also have with us representatives from two of our partner installers. These are the two companies that actually do the building envelope work: SnugPlanet, represented by John Herrod tonight, and Halco by Matt Dennis, I believe. And you'll be hearing a lot more from them when we get to the Q&A later in the talk, or at the end of my talk. I will only be talking for 15 or 20 minutes. So there's lots of HeatSmart groups in New York at this point. We are broadcasting from HeatSmart Tompkins here in the center, and we were kind of the epicenter of the growth of this whole movement in New York. So what HeatSmart is meant to do is to remove barriers that might be stopping you as individuals from taking action. These are going to be your decisions about your house, but do you have the information you need? So we try to provide transparency for costs and quality issues, accessible information on all the options, and there are often more than one way to solve a house. And then we just want to generate confidence and a path forward. We know that heat pumps work, and we want you to feel confident about it. So yeah, this is just another moment of me not being so serious, but HeatSmart cool cats use their paws to help you through the pause. And this is our outreach committee, by the way, over here. They're the ones that gather every week to figure out what kind of, how our website should be designed and all the rest. So there's lots of volunteers working to help us in this program. So tonight's topic is air sealing and insulation. And in a typical house, the act of heating can actually create drafts, because hot air is going to rise through the house. It'll get into the attic. And if it can get out of the attic, you now have suction, and that's going to pull cold air in from the basement area. And so you've got a circulation of outside air coming in and being warmed up and then being lost. That's sometimes referred to as the stack effect. And it's a feature of not having good air sealing, even more than a matter of insulation. And then we don't usually experience these leaks. Sometimes you might have a room where there's one side you just don't want to sit in because there's a cold draft. But usually we're not so aware of them. But there was a study by the DOE that said if all the leaks in a typical home were combined, it would be like having a window open all winter long. So that's how much heat we're often losing. So I just learned about this myself, and I wanted to share with you the ABCs of air sealing and insulation. So A is for attic, not aardvark. And as we just were looking at in that slide, heat rises and it'll be lost from the attic. And so if you aren't doing the whole house, if you're doing this in stages, start at the top in the attic. And then B is for basement. And again, remember that stack effect. That's where the cold air is going to get in. And so if you only have room for two places in the house, do the attic and then the basement. And then finally, C is for the conditioned space. That's really where you want to be, where you want to live. But its temperature is determined more by the attic and basement than its own insulation. It does need insulation too, but it's often the last area that you want to invest in terms of what bang for your buck. So for envelope assessment, either of our companies, Snug or Halco, will begin with the discussion, and find out about your goals, and if there are problems with your house that you want to solve, what are they? All those kinds of things are very important. So make sure you give them lots of information at the beginning. And then they will inform you of insulation needs and options. They will get the data that is needed to properly size a heat pump system in the process. And you'll get one or more proposals for recommended improvements. And I will say, when you get an assessment through HeatSmart, it is free and there's no obligation. So you'll get these proposals, but it's up to them to give you a proposal that you just can't refuse, because otherwise you can. Okay, so the value of insulated and air-sealed homes are many. And the first one is, of course, saving energy and money on your utility bills, also reducing carbon footprints if you are concerned about that. It also improves the interior environment a great deal. So you get better humidity control, fewer ice dams, reduced noise and pest intrusion, better. So it can really help to make the inside a healthier, more comfortable place. And then there's a number of different kinds of insulation. I won't cover them all here, but I'll mention a couple of the big ones. One is cellulose here in kind of a granular form. And cellulose can be used loose in attics if you're trying to deal with that stack effect that we were talking about. It's also one of the things, if you have a wall in your house that never got any insulation to begin with, and it's hollow, you can sometimes come in after the fact, make a small hole and fill it full of cellulose and then reseal the wall. So it can often be very useful there, allowing you to make some fixes without totally demolishing the inside walls. It's a natural material. It does not in itself provide an air or vapor barrier. So, you know, in an attic situation like this, you would want to make sure it's air sealed first before you put this stuff down on top of it. And it has a decent R value. So then spray foam is probably the other biggest material used. It can be used in a lot of places if you've got access. So from basements, and both of these pictures are I think, in basement areas. Basement walls, and here it looks like they're doing the rim joist, maybe where the top of the foundation. Closed cell spray foam provides both air sealing and a vapor barrier. So you know, where it's a good use, it does all the jobs at once. And one of the issues with the spray foams has been in the past the blowing agents. This is sort of a liquid plastic that gets mixed as it's used and has to fly through the air. So there's a gas that has to help carry it from the nozzle of the applicator to the wall. And that's the blowing agent. And they used to be pretty horrendous greenhouse gases. But we now have fourth generation blowing agents that hardly have any greater greenhouse gas potential than water or a CO2 molecule. They're really very mild. And all of the HeatSmart installers, or all both of them, use the fourth generation blowing agents for any kind of major work. So I want to encourage you to enroll now. And you might say, well, what's the point? We can't really do anything, can we? And the answer is yes, you can do a lot. You can do a great deal right now, because our installers have been working to solve their own issues with the pause, and they've developed some very good remote assessment techniques. So they can look at aerial photographs, they can get your past fuel record of fuel use, they can talk to you and interview you and ask you to send selected pictures to them. And they can actually come up with pretty good recommendations just from doing that. And the advantage of that is that all of that can take a while. And sometimes these are difficult decisions. People have to weigh the cost. Do they you know, how much do you want it? Maybe you've got a couple of different proposals and you're trying to make, you know, sort out which one you think fits your needs the best. So all of that can take time. And if you get it started now, then when the pause finally does release us, you'll be ready to go. So this is, if you want to enroll in the program, you do it online, and you do it at the HeatSmartTompkins.org website. And this is what our homepage that you'll land on looks like right now. The enrollment button is down here in the lower right, and if you click on that, it would take you straight to the enrollment form. It only takes about 3 minutes to do it. It's not a awful form. We ask a few useful bits of information, but it's very reasonable. So there are tremendous incentives right now for home energy efficiency. And one that just was released this week, this is brand new, the state, and it's administered by NYSERDA through the Green Jobs and Green New York program, is now offering 0% loans, right? So 0% interest rates for energy efficiency measures. And that's only going to be happening for this year, but it's good for the life of the loan if you get one. So that's a tremendous opportunity right now to jump in and get some of this work done. And that's available to anyone. It does not have an income requirement. There are also some really powerful programs at NYSERDA that are based on income. So if you're below 60% of the median county income, you can get $7,000 grants that you don't have to pay back. It has to be for approved work, but your installer can tell you what can be done with that. So that's the Empower program, and it's really wonderful. And then there's also the Assisted Home Performance program. So after you've used up that $7,000, you might be able to get matching funds, $4,000 in matching funds for the next chunk of expense. And the installers may have some additional special financing packages available for specific work, and you can ask them to tell you about those when you're getting an assessment. And so if you want to get an assessment, you should do it by enrolling on our website at HeatSmartTompkins.org. When you do that enrollment form I talked about, you will be able to check off as many of the participating installers as you like for, you know, asking for assessments. And I will send your lead to as many of them as you request, and you should hear from them within just a couple days of filling out that form. Yeah, so coming events is the last thing I've got here. You know, due to COVID-19, everything that we're doing right now is, any live event is an online event. And there's a schedule here. We've got a whole bunch of webinars scheduled for April and May, and there will be more coming up. Some of them, if it doesn't say who it's by either Lisa or I. And then there's 4 of them coming up that will each be a presentation by the different installers. So if you want to get a better feel for each of them, catch some of these. These are noon webinars, and they're not too long. And so I just wanted to acknowledge that our program is run largely by volunteers. The board is all volunteer. We've got other people who aren't on the board, but doing a lot of good work. Lisa and I are the co-directors, and we have an excellent communications consultant that helps us. So thanks for listening. Really appreciate it. And we're going to shift over now to the Q&A, and the Matt and John, and I guess we've got Hal Smith, owner of Halco, on line 2 tonight. So your questions should be, you've got a great opportunity to learn as much. Make them as specific as you would like. And I think, yeah, that was it. So.
Jonathan, any chance while they're getting the questions together, I could jump in for a second?
You bet.
Appreciate it. Yeah, my name's Hal Smith with Halco. I just wanted to touch base a little bit more on this brand new 0% financing. We just found this out the end of last week. And this is monies that NYSERDA has put in to help bounce back from the COVID. We found out that there's $20 million in the fund, which sounds like a tremendous amount of money. But when you take that across the whole state, I'd encourage people that are interested in making improvements to react fast, because I predict that money will be there for months. They said it could be up to a year or until funds are depleted. So if they don't refund it, it definitely is not going to last a year. But I want to also say that what a tremendous opportunity this money is, because this is truly 0% money that you can choose your term of 5 years, 10 years, or even 15 years. I mean, 180 months at 0%. That you just don't find that deal. And this is not one of these come-ons where, you know, like a car dealer's paying a tremendous dealer fee to get a 0% loan. This is money that NYSERDA's put in the state fund. We as contractors pay no dealer fees. We just pass this on through, but it makes it very, very affordable to make energy efficiency improvements. And I mean, these other programs that Jonathan talked about, the Empower and the HeatSmart, they're all by themselves awesome programs, but this 0% is just taking this thing through the roof. And what a great opportunity. If someone's out there and has been thinking about making improvements, now's the time. And I just would say jump on fast, because I see this money going in a few months. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks, Hal.
Thanks, Hal. This is Lisa. I'd love to jump in and just say that there's some folks on the webinar joining from other HeatSmart territories outside of HeatSmart Tompkins. And so everything Jonathan said applies to you, but just enroll with your local HeatSmart program. If you're up in HeatSmart Otsego or HeatSmart Southern Tier or HeatSmart Central New York, I think there's a couple of you on here who are not in the Tompkins area. And also, Jonathan, do you want to unshare your screen now and give?
I am going to. I just thought I'd bring this map back up.
Oh yes, thank you for doing that. Sure. So in the follow-up email to this webinar, I'll send a survey, and also I'll send contact information for all the HeatSmart programs in case. And if there is no HeatSmart program where you live, you are welcome to just enroll with us with HeatSmart Tompkins, and we'll help you out. So great. So let's turn it over to Matt Dennis to introduce Halco Energy. And then we'll hear from John Herrod of SnugPlanet. And then we'll have your questions.
Hey, hi everybody. My name is Matt with Halco. Just want to tell you a little bit about Halco. We've been with the HeatSmart program now since the beginning. We're part of 3 HeatSmart programs throughout our service territory. We've been in business since 1984. We are a full service home contractor, or home performance contractor, which means we do everything. From insulation, air sealing, but we also install air source, ground source heat pumps, heat pump water heaters, basement waterproofing, solar, pretty much anything under the roof we can take care of for you. We've got 120 people on staff. Half of that's our service department. We have a dedicated service department that can pretty much work on pretty much anything. But the reason we have that is because we install a lot of equipment, and that equipment is sophisticated. It's not plug and play. You don't just set it and forget it. It needs some attention. So we want to make sure we take a look at that. We are a fully insured contractor. That doesn't just mean we've got standard liability. We have full liability coverage, workers' comp, pollution insurance, as well as umbrella policies that cover everything. And that everything in between. And we like to touch on, point out about pollution insurance, especially when we're talking about things like spray foam and glues and solvents and refrigerant. You know, those are all chemicals, and those chemicals need to be handled in a proper way. It's not something that any, Bob, Dick, and Harry should be messing with, especially in your home, to be safe. Because if there's an issue, And it's a chemical issue. That's a pollution issue. And if your contractor is not properly covered for that, then they're not covered for it. So if something goes wrong, not that it does often, but sometimes things go wrong. So we've got to make sure that we've got those coverages for you. I'm sure there's a heck of a lot more I could talk about. We're open 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 365 days a year. And that's not just a random boast. If you call us at 2 a.m. on Sunday, a real life person answers the phone at our office. Who we have an overnight staff. So whenever you talk to Halco, you're always talking to Halco. You're not talking to an answering service, and you're not leaving a message. So we're fully dedicated and committed to be here and help you out. And hopefully we've got any questions you have we can answer for you. So, thanks for coming.
Thanks, Matt. Take it away, John Herrod from SnugPlanet.
Thanks, Lisa. Yeah, I'm John Herrod, and in 2006, my wife Elizabeth and I started SnugPlanet. We're a mission-driven company, and our mission is to save energy in homes in ways that make sense for people and the planet. We're a kind of a hyper-local company. We do most of our work in Tompkins and surrounding counties, and in that time, we've made hundreds of homes safer, more comfortable, and more efficient. We have a team of about 20 people, and we feel that that's big enough to offer a full service experience while at the same time a lot of personal attention. Before the pandemic came around, we really prided ourselves on doing in-depth in-home visits, and right now we're working on some virtual tools, some of which Jonathan mentioned, that will allow us to offer that same level of service with a lot less in-person contact. Our advisors will talk to you about your goals, review the photos and energy bills that you share, and then work with you to come up with a detailed plan to meet your goals. We started as an insulation company, and that's still one of our core services. We really believe that getting the building envelope right is what will make a heat pump not only perform well, but be cost effective to run. And we are a full service insulation company. Our specialties are insulation, our cellulose insulation and closed cell spray foam. We also do a lot of basement encapsulations and crawl space encapsulations where we take a damp basement and essentially solve the moisture problems by using a combination of vapor barriers and air sealing and dehumidification. And one of the reasons that we're really excited to be part of HeatSmart is not only are we passionate about insulation, we're really passionate about heat pumps. We think, air sources is really our primary focus in terms of heat pumps. We do offer geothermal, but air sources is really where we're at. And we like them because they work great, they're cost effective, and for most households, they are the easiest and most accessible way to kick the fossil fuel habit. We like to sweat the small stuff. We do very detailed design work, and we also try to make sure that all the fine points of our installations are top notch. We install high quality Mitsubishi and LG equipment, and we do service all the equipment that we install. And one thing that I just wanted to mention that we care a lot about is making the benefits of heat pumps and the benefits of healthy, energy efficient homes accessible to everyone. And that's why we're active participants in New York's programs for low and moderate income homeowners. We really go out of our way to see if we can leverage all the available funding from Empower, from assisted home performance, from the heat pump incentives. And in some cases, we can get all the work that the homeowner needs paid for under those programs. Sometimes, though, there's still some money remaining, and that's where this 0% interest loan that Hal mentioned is just a fantastic thing. If you can spread the cost of the improvements out over 15 years, you can get a greener, healthier, more comfortable home right away, and each month you're going to be saving more in energy than you're going to be paying in loan payments. So we're very excited to hear all your insulation questions, and we're also excited to be part of the HeatSmart Tompkins 2020 campaign. Thank you.
Thanks so much, John. And both Snug and Halco are going to be presenting short lunchtime case studies about one house that they transformed through their work. So look for those and sign up and join to find out more in depth. So we'll take some questions. I see one in the chat, but let's see who else has questions. You can just unmute yourself and ask, or you can type a question into the chat. You can direct it at Matt and Hal, or at John, or both, or everybody. Okay, I'm going to go with Jerry's question in the chat, seeing no others. How can heat loss be prevented from air ducts traveling through the attic, a basically unconditioned space? Is it best to condition the attic itself beyond that, which is typically considered attic insulation?
Depends on a couple of different things. If you've got mechanical equipment in your attic, like the air handler, or even a furnace, if you've got mechanical equipment in the attic, it really is better to condition the entire attic. You know, insulate the slopes as opposed to the floor, mainly because what you're doing is that equipment is working pretty much outside. You might as well put it out on your porch. But if all you have in the attic is ductwork and the mechanical equipment is somewhere else, say in the basement or living space, what we would do is spray foam insulate and seal the attic ductwork to make sure that you're keeping that heat or cool air not bleeding into the attic space itself, and thus losing a bunch of heat and energy. So yeah, it depends on what the setup is, but you know, there's one solution for one thing and one solution for another.
I see. Well, that's very helpful, Matt. So you would actually wrap insulation around the ductwork?
If all that's up there is just the ductwork, we would.
Yes, that is the case.
Yeah, we would use spray foam and seal the ductwork and insulate it that way.
Okay.
To encapsulate the duct system.
Very good. Thank you so much.
Mm-hmm.
John, do you have anything more to add to what Matt said on this question?
No, I agree very much with what he said. I think one thing to emphasize is that spray foam is really the best product for this application, because it not only insulates the ducts, reduces the conduction through the ducts, but it also seals all the little leaks in the joints, and it acts as a vapor barrier, so that if you have cooled air running through those ducts in the summertime, you don't end up with condensation and moisture problems. So if you are going to insulate the ducts themselves rather than the whole attic, spray foam is absolutely the best way to do it.
Thank you very much, John.
Thanks. Other questions? I know people came on here with specific problems that they're trying to solve in their own homes, so this is a great time to ask.
Well, in my house, this is Art. I've got insulated ductwork, so it's a 4, I think it is, insulation.
Is it in the attic?
I have it where it goes outside from the bathrooms, so it's in the ceiling.
Mm-hmm.
But it's
so is that just the venting for your bathroom?
Right, the venting for the
yeah, that's fine. That's typical for a bath vent, is to have it's probably just a flexible duct that runs from the bath vent to the outside. That's normal. I think what Jerry was really more talking about is for your HVAC system.
Okay.
So Art, tell us what improvements you were thinking about in your house in terms of home performance.
Well, I've got 2 bedrooms right now that have the old blown insulation in it. And that's settled because I brought home a camera from work one time, an infrared camera, and I could see that it had settled. So I've got take the walls down inside and re-insulate those 2 rooms.
So John, Herrod, is that something you see a lot, and what do you recommend in a case like that?
Yeah, so I often try to back up in a situation like this and, you know, back up from the defect that we're seeing, which is the settled insulation, back to the problem that we're trying to solve. And if there's comfort problems or excessive energy bills, then it may make sense to go after that partially insulated wall. It can be kind of expensive relative to the savings to fix settled cellulose insulation, but it doesn't necessarily require you to tear down the whole wall. We can go back and repack those walls and get them filled, not only full to the top, but actually pack the insulation up to the proper density where it can no longer settle. And so if that's something that makes sense to do, there's a way to do it that's a lot less invasive than tearing down the whole wall.
Well, I've done other rooms in the house, and that's what I did. I took the walls down, and there's other places that you can't get that blown in stuff, you know, around some of the framing members and stuff, like around windows and things like that. So I've done quite a few of the rooms in the house, and I just wanted to just continue to do that. I think it probably makes more sense. I mean, the walls are the original walls, and they're only 3/8 sheetrock, so I don't think it's really not too bad as far as the cost and the work. You know, I'm doing it myself, but I just wanted to understand some of the techniques that you might use today. I guess the foam is one of the techniques, spray foam. So that could be used. I just used, in the other places, I just used the fiberglass insulation.
So Deb from Geneva, did you want to ask about your insulation situation? Tell us a little bit about your house.
I guess I'm trying to gather ideas. I have a 1930 house, so it has plaster walls. So I don't know, I'm listening to Art and go, I don't want to take these walls down. But I know I have a lot of air loss. It was a house that wasn't well maintained. So I need better weather. I need two exterior doors. I need better weather stripping. And they also closed in a porch, which they used as a sunroom, but it has no heat out there. And it's hard to, well, I mean, if you walk near it in the winter, it's cold. You can feel a draft coming in. So that's some of it. And then apparently the heating technology was different in the 30s, where they had the cold air returns on the outside walls. Because I have these big wooden floor grates. They're kind of weird looking, but somewhere along the way they redid everything. I'm not so sure nowadays it's even still correct. Does that make sense to the Halco people?
Yes.
Yeah, that makes total sense. I know exactly what you're describing.
Okay.
Describe to Deb sort of what your process would be going to her house and what you'd be looking for.
Yeah, so basically you're describing an old octopus gravity-fed furnace at one point in time. That's what your house had. So yeah, I mean, plaster walls can be tricky. I guess really what we'd want to do first is figure out where the big opportunities are. You sort of anytime you go for insulation, you always go for the low-hanging fruit first, just because that's your biggest opportunity at your lowest cost. It's typically attics, typically basements, and then the conditioned space. If I had to guess, have you got a big walk-up attic?
Yes, I do.
Okay.
But there's boards down and there's insulation underneath the boards.
Yep. So a lot of the times what we find with that sort of setup in that sort of era of housing stock is you've got balloon frame walls, and what that means is you could theoretically drop a penny through a wall cavity from the attic and it'll land in the basement. So what happens is that chimney effect that Jonathan was talking about earlier is really exacerbated in that type of house. So you've got a lot of air that's coming in from the bottom in the basement, coming up those sidewalls and escaping through the attic. So when you have air leakage in a house, your air coming in has to be equal to the air going out, or the house would explode. So a lot of times you go to a house and somebody says, "Oh, my windows are drafty." I'll usually say, "Great, let's take a look in the attic." Because if we can stop the air from going out, we stop the air from coming in. And with walk-up attics, what we typically do is, well, there's a lot of solutions. You could encapsulate the entire space if you wanted to condition that attic and make it conditioned space. That tends to be a little pricey because those attics tend to be fairly large with tall roofs. Another avenue would be to seal the top plates around the attic floor where that chimney effect is really happening, as well as air seal the attic flat and then put over a properly insulated air sealed cover over the walk-up stairs that can be removed.
Well, it's a door. I open up a door and go up a stairway.
Yep. And at the top of this, we would put something together that would sit at the top of that stairway that you could remove. It's a removable hatch. Because if you think about it, the thermal boundary and the air barrier of that house is the attic floor, right? So if you have a big hole at the top of those stairs, you've got a big hole in your thermal boundary. If I had to guess, that door that you're talking about is it just an interior wooden door?
It is an interior wooden door, but it's one of the few weather stripped doors in the house.
Weather stripped is, but probably not very well insulated in general.
Well, it has green foam, not like the pink foam, but it's about an inch thick, all the way on the door and then up the stairway.
Okay. All right. So it sounds like you've got, some things have been done to try to curb some of that air loss and air leakage. But that's one avenue to look at in an attic space. And then, with these older homes also, you got to look at the basement, especially if you've got, if it's a stone foundation, you're going to have a fair amount of air leakage around the rim joist.
It's cinder block.
Okay. So there's typically a lot of opportunities just sealing up around the rim joist area as well, and just tightening up the whole space. Because remember, we stop air from coming in, we reduce air from going out. But yeah, there's a bunch of different things you can do, and it's one of those things where we got to put a blower door in your house, and we can chase around with a thermal camera and figure out where your infiltration is, and sort of how to knock it out.
Okay. Well, some of the again, this poor house didn't have the best maintenance, and there's a place where some of the vinyl siding, it has come loose, and I see there's a very thin layer of styrofoam.
Okay.
On the side of the house, which they sided over the original cedar shake. So there's a couple layers on the house, but I don't know if they're really doing any good.
Well, I mean, they're not hurting anything. Yeah, I mean, they're adding some thermal value to the house. I can't say how much, and how it really depends on how well it's installed.
Great.
Okay.
Let's go to Bob's question, and John Herrod is going to take that. And if he's got anything to add to Deb's questions, he can add that on.
Yeah, I'll just add really briefly. I think everything that Matt said from a technical perspective, I agree with 100%. We've seen these same issues in many houses. I think this is part of where the value of the no-cost energy assessment really comes in, is that you would get an experienced person like Matt or myself out to your house to actually, apply the knowledge they've gained through the hundreds of houses they've been in, and kind of help prioritize and figure out, of all the different things that we can do to this house, what are the ones that are going to go the furthest towards solving your problems, and how can we work within the budget you have? Is financing part of this, so that we can do as much as possible to improve this house and meet your goals within your budget constraints. So this sounds like a, an excellent candidate for a full energy audit.
Thank you both. Appreciate it.
So Bob's asking, he said he has a 12 by 15 room with a lot of air leaks. He's planning to remove the interior wall surfaces, which is old paneling, and that he doesn't want anymore. And would it make sense for Snug or Halco to come and do spray foam for just one room like that? So John, you want to take that?
Yeah, I mean, we tend to be better geared towards doing whole house projects. So if we came out to do a quote on that, we'd probably want to talk to you about, is there anything else you're interested in changing about the house? But 12 by 15 is a good sized room, and a full insulation package would definitely be something that we'd be happy to quote.
Thanks.
Matt, did you want to respond?
Yeah, no, and just what John had said, and the reason he mentioned kind of a smaller project like that is because of the initial costs involved to roll out a rig and get you all set up. But yeah, I mean, to your question does it make sense to do just one room? Yeah, I mean, it certainly makes sense, especially if you want to insulate it properly, if you want to really seal it up, if it is pretty leaky. And if you've got it stripped down to the studs, that's really the best time to do something like that. So yeah, it makes sense.
Yeah, thanks, man.
Okay, great. So we only have 3 minutes left. If anybody has another quick question, we could try one more, but otherwise we'll wrap this up. And thank you guys for being here. There's a few more people on the call who haven't asked questions, so this is your opportunity if you've got something for the HeatSmart team or for any of our installer partners.
Maybe I could just say something, Lisa, while we're waiting, if there's another question.
Go ahead, Hal.
Yeah, thank you. I just wanted to talk to Bob's question. The reason is the spray foam rigs that we have, they take, certain amount of mobilization. You got to get the rig there and you got to get it warmed up in the foam. And so what you would find is we'd take a room like that and we'd actually do the spray foam in that room in less than an hour. We would do it very quickly. What we do a lot of times with small jobs like that is if you're flexible in the time, sometimes our crews will finish up on a job at 1 o'clock in the afternoon, and that's when it's, it makes sense to go. We can go to a small job like yours and finish out the day. So very definitely doable, and we can, if you're flexible with the time, we can usually fit it in and make it very affordable and do an awesome job at the same time.
Yeah, and I'll just say that that because we require our contractors to do the 4th generation spray foam that has a much different impact than the standard spray foam on the climate. The old spray foams, the propellant or the blower agent was so bad that even the savings in fossil fuel burning you would see over 40 years, you still wouldn't undo the impact on the atmosphere. So anyway, those require big equipment to come. It's not just like the spray foam in a can you get from Lowe's or Home Depot. So it is a big undertaking, and it's well worth doing it right, because it's something you're only going to do probably once. As Elizabeth Herrod would say from SnugPlanet, this is something you're going to do once in the time you own your house, and you want to do it right the first time. So, okay. Well, thanks again, everybody.
Thank you.
And
Thank you.
really enjoyed having everyone on the webinar, and a version of this will be up on our website, so you can direct people who weren't able to make it tonight to watch the webinar online anytime they want. I will be sending right after this a quick survey about the webinar, and we'd love you to take 5 minutes and fill that out so we know how we can make our webinars better for those of you who are joining. So thanks so much and have a lovely evening.